In this video, I will provide you with a method that you can use to build a sidewalk by yourself. This can be a short sidewalk or a long sidewalk. And in our example, we are going to build a sidewalk that's going to be about 60 feet long. And it's going to be about 4 inches thick, coming from the front door to the street. And again, 65 feet long. Actually measured it. It was a little over 64 feet, I believe. So let's go ahead and remove the sidewalk. And for the most part, you're going to need a couple of 2x4s or 2x6s, depending upon the thickness of your sidewalk and whether or not you're actually going to form it in sections or form the entire thing at once and then pour it in sections. Now, before we start digging, we're going to need to find out exactly where the sidewalk is going to be located. And what I like to do is drive a stake 1.5 inches further than the finished sidewalk. And the reason for this is because our 2x4s are going to be 1.5 inches. If I was going to use 2-inch material, then I would need to move this back 2 inches. And then I'm going to try and figure out about where to locate the stake over here. And when I think I have it right where I want it, I will connect a string line to it. Now keep in mind that unless this area is somewhat flat or at the very least straight, you might need to remove some of the soil. If you have grass, plants, you might need to remove them so that you can get a nice tight string line that's going to represent something straight. And since we're going to be coming off of the top of the curb with the top of our sidewalk, it's going to be the same height. That's exactly where we will place our string. And sometimes you can put a nail or a screw in there to prevent the string from moving up and down. And of course, you would need to make sure that these stakes, both of them, are firmly attached and aren't going to be moving. So here we have a nice straight string, and here I had to remove some of the soil so that I could come around and attach the string to the screw. And I'm going to put a link to a video that's actually going to show you how you can use the string to create a nice straight line. And of course, this is going to be very important. You want a straight sidewalk, you're going to need a straight line. And I'm sure that makes sense. Now, if you want the sidewalk to come square off of something or off at a 90-degree angle or even another angle, different angle, then you could always use a framing square. And the framing square can be used to place up against the object. And in this case, the object is going to be the curb. And to do this, it's not going to be that difficult. You could drive a couple of different stakes in the ground and then attach the string to them. And if you measure from the framing square 1 inch, let's just say that this is 1 inch from the string to the square and 1 inch from the string to the square here, then you're going to be close enough. However, if you have a situation to where you set your framing square up against the curb and you measure the string and it's 3 inches and then it's 2 inches here, then that's going to tell you that there's a good chance the string is going to need to move to the right or in this direction. And the opposite would be true if you had a string, if our long string provided us with a wider measurement here, let's say 3 inches here and then a 1/2 inch here, then we know that in order to make this a 90-degree angle coming off of the curb, that the string is going to have to go in this direction. And again, that can be done by simply driving a few stakes in, grabbing the string, tying it around the stake, and then grabbing your framing square, setting it up next to the string, and then relocating the stakes in whatever direction you think it needs to go until you get something square enough that you would be happy with. After that is done, you can feel free to dig out all of the soil necessary to get ready to form your walkway, or you can also do this in sections. So you can remove all of the soil or you can do it in sections, just as long as your string is nice and straight. Now, another thing I'd like to point out is that you shouldn't leave the string overnight. Unhook it from one end and then lay it down or bring it into your garage. But it's not uncommon to have a string sit overnight, get wet, start to sag, and then you start working and you're working with a string that's not straight anymore. And of course, I like to use nylon string also for this. Now let's go ahead and build our first section, and we are working with 8-foot 2x4s, and you're simply going to form this side with the string first. That way you can measure off of this side to locate this board here. So we don't need to have two string lines. We don't need a string line on each side, even though you can install one if you think it's going to be beneficial. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how the form attaches to the stake and how we're going to use the string line as our guide. Now it's probably going to be better to drive the stakes into the ground right next to the string, and then after they are firmly secured, you can use the string and a pencil to draw a line here. And you can do that on all of the stakes and then use that line to attach the form to the stake. Because if for some reason the form board is lifted or raised a little bit, it can actually grab your string and bring it up. And if it does that, you're no longer going to have a straight line. And in a sidewalk this long, 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch might not ever be noticeable. So it's not going to be an end all or something you need to worry about. But again, we can see how the string represents the inside line here that is nice and straight. And I can't say it enough, the string is key here to making a straight sidewalk. Now, even though we can measure from this board to get the width of our sidewalk, we're going to need to use levels to level across to get the height of the form board. So here you can see where we have a level on this side over a board, and here you can see where we have a board that's in between our form boards, and we're using a level to straighten it out. So hopefully that makes sense. Just level across here. Like I said, we don't need a string on that side. This measuring tape will provide us with this distance. The level will provide us with the location in this direction. And then you should be done with your forms and ready to pour your first section of concrete. And as far as finishing the concrete, I don't have any videos on that currently. But if you need more help, feel free to leave a comment in the comment area, and I will try to get on that as soon as possible. However, I do have a video on how you can mix your own concrete. I will put a link to that here. And basically what you're going to do is mix your concrete 1 or 2 bags at a time, or whatever you're mixing, whatever materials you're using to mix. If you got your rock separate, your sand separate, and your cement separate. And then just start pouring from one side and then work your way towards the other side. And then you're just going to simply screed off the top with a 2x4. You're going to take the 2x4 and move it back and forth, and then move it in this direction as you're moving it back and forth, and that's called screeding. And of course you can use a hand trowel to finish a section of concrete like this. And I think if this is going to be about 3.5 feet wide by 8 feet and about 4 or 5 inches deep, you're going to need between 10 and 15 bags of 60-pound concrete. But it wouldn't be a bad idea for your first section. You know you're going to need a lot of cement. Wouldn't be a bad idea to start off with at least 20 bags of concrete. And if you only use 10 of them, then you will know exactly how many bags of concrete you need for each section for the rest of the project. And then once this section dries, you can start your next section. And a lot of people ask me, how long does it take this to dry? Well, when it's hard, it's ready for the next section. When this is nice and solid, you can start pouring the next section. Just be careful working around this section here. You don't want to be running a trowel across it. You don't want to be setting any wood on it. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, let it dry for about a week and then pour the next section. But either way, the next section is going to be the same size and basically the same process. You're going to form it with the string, lining everything up with the top here. Again, drive the stakes into the ground, mark them, attach the forms, and do the same at the other end. Measure across, level everything to position this form board in order to position it correctly. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the string line, because it's not going to be a bad idea to grab the string line every once in a while and just kind of pull it up and let it go, just kind of like snap it. And the reason why you're going to do that is to make sure that it's not hung up on anything over here. So if you grab it and you pull it up and then it kind of moves a little bit and you see that it's off 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch, you can check the string, you can check your forms and try and find the problem. And even though I'm not providing you with enough detail for something like this, once you snap the line, once you grab it and you move it a little bit, and it doesn't do anything, you're probably going to be in a good spot. And the rest is self-explanatory. You're simply going to keep moving the forms, lining them up with a string, leveling across, measuring to make sure you got the same distance. and that the string is positioned correctly, of course. Doing one section at a time until you have completed your project. So not too difficult, right? Yes, I know it's not going to be that easy, especially if you've never done anything like this before. And if you haven't done anything like this before and you want everything to turn out great, then like I said, it wouldn't be a bad idea to hire a cement finisher, somebody who works with concrete every day, and have them help you for one day. It might cost you a couple $100. But as they say, information is not cheap. If you're watching this video, you might be watching advertisements. And those advertisements allow me to sit behind my desk all day long and make these videos to provide you with as much information as I possibly can. So again, I'm just throwing that out there. Now, before I end the video, I just kind of want to point out one thing, and that is that I made another video on how to pour driveways in sections. And this tip right here might not apply to pouring driveways or larger patios, but it will work for pouring a walkway like this. Now, let's just say that you bought 10 bags of concrete, or that you want to stop pouring by 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, don't worry about it. All you need to do is install this board wherever you're going to stop. So if you have enough concrete to get to this point here, that's when you will install the board. Just simply push it tight up against the concrete, throw a few stakes in the ground, attach it to the form boards, and then start finishing the concrete. So I hope that makes sense. Hope I explained it right. If not, then feel free to leave any questions you have in the comment area, and I will answer them as soon as possible.